All right, so y'all took your first test and I graded it and it was rough, but it's normally rough. First test in 7th grade pre-AP is always hard, and every year my students traditionally don't do that well on it. So don't look at this as like, oh crap, I shouldn't even be in pre-AP. This is just the starting point. If you didn't do so well on this test, you know you're going to have to work a little bit harder and maybe hit up some tutorial times. You're definitely going to have to spend time at home. If you are not already practicing or working at home, you have to spend time for pre-AP, and that's the expectation as you move to AP courses in high school, that you're going to be studying on your own. That said, this was the first test. We're going to move on from here, and you have plenty of time to do better. So don't stress that this was really, really rough. But as your teacher, I want to make sure you understand some of the things about the test. So I'm going to go over some specifics from it. First of all, the multiple choice questions were each 1 point, all or nothing. The questions on the last page, I had a rubric for each question, and you got certain points for like the labels, or if you had to do the average, you got a point for that, and then also the point for the final answer of the question. So those were based on a rubric, and if you showed your work, you might have gotten partial credit. Question number 4 on the test had an error. I didn't even count that one. Number 13 had a skill we haven't technically covered this year, but it's in one of our units coming up. So if you got that right, it was a bonus, and if you didn't get it right, it didn't count against you either. Okay, moving on. I'm looking at my notes. Things that you need to do from now on in our tests. Okay, so here is number 16 maybe. You need to put a label. A lot of you didn't put a label on negative 11 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, I had to go get the baby. So now you get to see her. All right, so labels on number 16 and 17. And number 17, I was asking how many feet deep or what the depth was. So it needed to either say negative 180 feet or 180 feet deep. So some of that goes into reading the question carefully and make sure you read what they're asking for. For instance, on number 18, the question actually is how many times heavier? And a lot of you told me pounds, like some number and then pounds. I wasn't asking you pounds, I was asking you times heavier. So for that problem, it also said then the average weight of a house cat. So you needed to do average of 5.5 and 16 pounds. A ton of you did median. Like you lined up all your numbers and crossed them off to the middle, and you use the middle number. It's close. The middle number, the median, and the average were very close, but they're not the same. And so a lot of you got that one wrong. And some of you, your answer was so close and you had zero work. So I couldn't even give you any partial credit because I couldn't see anything that you did. And that question hurt a ton of you. The other thing is it said round to the 100th. And some of you didn't round. Some of you rounded to the 10th place. And some of you don't know how to round, which is something that happens every year with my pre-AP kids. If the number after, okay, so I'm looking at the, supposed to round to the 100th place. It's, let me get you to see this, 0.365. I have to look at the thousands place, and it's 5, so that tells me the hundredths place is going to go up to a 7. All right, she's a fussy girl. Okay, number 19, you had to, it said, how can you use estimation? So you're supposed to tell me how. Some of you just showed it, which isn't what I was looking for, although I may have given you some credit. And then in questions like this where you have to write, it should be complete sentences, and you should try to use some vocab words. So you should have maybe said, you know, you can round the numbers to the nearest 10th place or the nearest whole number. And check for reasonableness. The last question, number 20, pet peeve of mine is when students convert fractions to decimals, mainly because decimals aren't as accurate as fractions. Look, 2/3 does not equal 0.66 or 0.666 or 0.666666. It's not the same thing. And so you can't, if you're adding and subtracting, multiplying, and dividing fractions, you cannot convert them to a decimal unless it turns into a perfect decimal that like ends. If it's a repeating decimal, don't do it. And in my class, just don't ever change a fraction to a decimal unless you're explicitly told to. Also, on question 20, even if your decimal answer was close, I wasn't testing you on decimals. I was testing you on can you add, subtract, multiply, and divide fractions. That's what I wanted to see. So if you change it to decimals, which I think 100, no, not 100, I would say 95% of you did that, you got it wrong because that's not what I was asking you for. Okay, like I said, I know this test wasn't the greatest, but you still have time this marking period to improve your grade, and now you kind of know what to expect from the tests in my class, so that just gives you a better picture of what you need to do. And I'm looking forward to actually meeting all of you and helping you improve what you're doing in my class.